Hello and welcome to another episode of The Only Playbook. We are so excited to have you guys here because, as you can see, we have a special guest with us. In this episode specifically, I have deemed Tej Talk because we are joined by none other than former PFF Research and Development intern Tej Seth. Tej, thank you so much for coming on, man. It's an absolute treat, and we certainly appreciate your time.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited. I think it'll be a lot of fun.
Let's start things off again. We appreciate you guys joining us. If you're, supporting us throughout this past 9 months that we've, come about, we're everywhere, all the platforms, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Google, Anchor, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. So appreciate all the support. Absolutely. I want to kick things off, Tej. I'm going to give you the floor. Give us a quick 2-minute introduction. Tell us a little bit about your background and, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for letting me do this. So I am currently a rising senior at the University of Michigan, majoring in information analysis and minoring in applied statistics. This past year, I was a research and development intern for Pro Football Focus. So got to work under Eric Eager there, who does a lot of cool public work. And, had a really good experience building different models, both on the public side and behind the scenes that can help teams. And I grew up a Lions fan, even though the first year that I followed football closely was the 2008 0-16 season. But for some reason I still decided to stick with it. I'm hoping that they can, kind of, successfully put together the rebuild here and get back to competing for playoffs and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way to truly test a fandom without having your first year as being a fan where they go 1-16. So for you to still be here 14 years later as a diehard Lions fan, that's a pretty big testament, man, because it seems like in your lifetime, the Lions haven't had a tremendous amount of success. So, to be able to overcome all those, it makes, our lifetimes and our whatever success, our teams have amounted to seem not as drastic. And so, but Tej, we want to pick your brain a little bit. We want to jump into obviously a little bit about your PFF background. How did that opportunity come about? What did you feel like you got kind of the most from that opportunity, and moving forward in other things that you do? What do you think you're going to take away from all of it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that opportunity really came. So my sophomore year of college. As I was looking for internships and stuff, I had my Twitter account where I was posting about football analytics or just any analysis or graph that I put together, I would just throw out there. And it started to, pick up some traction and stuff. And I noticed that some PFF employees started to follow me on that account. And so, PFF was always a company, since high school that I've read articles and I've really liked their data. And so I reached out to one of the employees and I said, do you know if PFF is offering any internships this summer? And he put me in touch with Eric Eager. And I went through the interview process and was able to get that. And, it was a great experience working there, having access to, basically any type of data that, I wanted to get my hands on was really cool. And, talking to the fantasy guys and, the college football guys and, just different people were giving me different perspectives on football. And I really enjoyed, just going through all of that.
Yeah, I mean, again, that sounds like a dream come true for somebody who is into analytics and into football, right? I mean, that's like a match made in heaven. One thing that I'll start us off and ask is, again, it's an analytically driven world right now, right? I watch a lot of baseball, and baseball has been heavy into analytics recently. I know football's, trending that way as well. For people that, again, use the argument or logic, analytics versus eye test. And now that there's, you've used your eyes to view something, a lot of times they're creating statistics now to quantify what it is that you're trying to quantify with your eye test. Tej, talk to us a little bit about, what you found from analytics that, help debunk a lot of the, I'm still going to use my eye test to determine who's good and who's not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of metrics out there for different positions that can really help you rank players in the position. But I think the main thing that analytics has really helped me understand is positional value and, how important, that is when team building, right? Analytics has really shown that, using premium picks in the NFL draft on running backs, linebackers, and interior offensive linemen doesn't have the same returns and the same surplus value as using it on the premier positions. So everyone knows quarterback, but like really should be prioritizing things that can help you in the passing game, wide receivers, offensive tackles, edge rushers. And then you can throw like, secondary pieces in like slightly a tier below. So that's really like changed the way I've watched football, because I watch a lot of it during the season. But, I started to see like, I can kind of see like how you can plug in a linebacker there. And like, it doesn't have as big of a drop off as if you're playing backup corners or something like that.
Yeah. I think a lot of that is what, I utilize PFF for, is a lot of their grades and all that stuff. And it's all great. Right. The one biggest thing that I think I found in differences is, where do you draw the line, right? I mean, it's not like these statistics are 100%, should be your basis for judging a player. I'm sure there's other ways to also do it, but even from somebody with that background with PFF, is there like a certain take it with a grain of salt, or maybe certain positions that you found don't, grade statistically as accurately as other positions will, if you will?
Yeah. That's a great question. You definitely cannot just use analytics to evaluate players. I try to look at as many things as I can. So like, I don't try to use end all be all statistics for any player when comparing within positions. Expected points added for quarterbacks, for example, is like a good metric to use, but that's influenced by your play caller and your receivers and your offensive line. So then you can look at, different things where you adjust for that type of stuff and try to make a better metric out of that. But to talk about a position that isn't stable year to year, it's cornerback play, and that's evaluated by PFF grade or completion percentage when targeted or passer rating when targeted, and we've seen that fluctuate a lot for a lot of cornerbacks throughout their career. I think a really good example of that is Darius Slay, who can half the years that he's been in the NFL, he's played at a Pro Bowl level, and the other half of the years, he's gotten burnt by receiver after receiver. So, it just happens a lot where secondary play just isn't as stable as, things involved in the passing offense and defensive line play and, different positions like that.
Yeah, it's an interesting point about the whole wide receiver offense tackle, about the draft grades that you mentioned, a draft style that you mentioned this year, because that's kind of what it was, right? We saw so many wide receivers get off the board. We saw so many offensive tackles and even edge rushers. So it seems like, the NFL is full on board with analytics, and it's like, that's the future, right?
Yeah, I think it's because analytics has worked in so many other sports. You talked about baseball, so we call it like, the Moneyball era in the early 2000s really changed the whole landscape of baseball, and it worked for the A's, it's worked for the Dodgers, it's worked for the Tampa Bay Rays. And then you saw it in basketball with the mid-range theory, where
three-pointer.
Yeah, it's 3 points or layups, right? 3 points or layups. The Warriors really led that revolution. And then we've seen it in other sports too. Like I don't follow soccer that closely, but Brentford is kind of like the Moneyball team of soccer. Mm-hmm. And they like way outperformed their the salary that they like had this year in the Premier League. So I think that's where like teams can kind of look around and see that it's working in so many other sports, and kind of apply that to football and say, we can build up our analytics department, and we don't have a salary cap there. So, we can just spend as much money as we want if we're the Ravens or the Browns, and get some top analysts that can really help us build a winning football team.
Yeah, two things. I want to say two things regarding analytics. Number one is it works better in sports that are less dynamic, like baseball per se, right? Like, the only thing dynamic about baseball is the pitcher and the catcher. Like that's where like multiple players integrate with each other before the play starts, right? The rest of it is just retrieve the ball, throw it. It's pretty straightforward on what you need to do. So analytics makes a lot of sense because you get the batters percentages and everything, and you can organize things before things happen. Versus a sport like football, this is why the huge debate is even prevalent, is because it's a dynamic sport. There's 11 dudes doing 11 different things. So the analytics on one, it's not so much like pitch the ball in one direction. There's a lot of things happening in all kinds of things, and there's defensive strategies in play. There's a lot happening in football. That's why it's my favorite sport, because it's never boring. There's just so much happening in so many unique ways. So it's hard to place numbers into that. So that being said, analytics is amazing. Anybody that's refusing to incorporate analytics into your sport, into your field, it's just dumb. I think it's just stupid. Yeah, sometimes it looks far-fetched. Sometimes the eye test tends to win. But what is the eye test? It's a gut feeling, right? It's what you've seen, what you recognize, which is just as important. But I don't think it should be one versus the other. You need both. You need the data to back up at what rate does this play succeed, and then you need the eye test to be like, you know what, I just have a hunch this cornerback's going to make a cut on the inside. There's no analytics for that, or at least there may be, but we don't have the data to exactly pinpoint the player's moves in whatever direction. So that being said, I am a big fan of analytics. I just think there's a war between analytics and, eye test. And I think that's the wrong way to approach this, whether it's watching football or NFL fantasy football. I think it's both equally important. If you really want to be good at something, or if you really want to see the success that people are having, you will quickly see that it's not completely analytics and it's not completely eye test.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I don't think there should be a war between people who value the eye test and people who value analytics, because I think working together is really where you can get some really good results out of that. I've learned so much from talking with my friend Steven Ruiz, or reading Ted Wynn's articles at The Athletic that are really deep in eye test and scheme related and stuff that I don't have as much of a background with, and that's helped me do better analytical studies with the data that I have to work with. So yeah, you're right about football being more dynamic than the other sports that I just mentioned. And that's why I think that the eye test will always be there for player evaluation. But analytics is really, really useful for the stuff that's at a more panoramic view and a higher level, like fourth down decisions, like the 2-point conversions that you talked about earlier, like the positional value that I just mentioned. That's where I really think that analytics can excel, and then it can help with player evaluation, but you just have to watch the players play to have a good feeling of them when you're evaluating them and comparing them within position.
Yeah. One thing I want to add is analytics is good, but I feel like there also should be an emphasis on the cost of the analytics being incorrect. Right. So for example, I was watching the Ravens play against the Colts last year. Right. And where, ESPN chances of winning was 99.1% for the Colts. They're playing the Ravens. And then Lamar Jackson comes back, scores 2 touchdowns, and then they win the game. So it was a 0.9% chance. But if I'm a betting man, if I go based on analytics, the cost of me being wrong there is very high. Same thing with there's many instances there. So I wonder, you think about, there's a 60% chance we're going to win if we get it right, but they should also think about, well, what's the percentage chance that we're going to lose if we get it wrong, right? I'm sure that kind of conversation also needs to be had, I think, in the coaches' boxes and all that.
I think that was the game me and Sweetcar were watching with you, right? And we're just wait.
Dude, yeah. we all said it. It made no sense that the Ravens were down to less than 1% to win. And I'm like, how are they analytically determining this? I mean, I guess it's based on time, possessions, et cetera, whatever the case may be, right? But again, it's not factoring the fact that Lamar Jackson runs a 4-3 and can run by your defense in 10 seconds and you're a touchdown behind, right? So that's a little bit different. And so I definitely am with you that, there has to be what if this doesn't work, or what's the negative ramifications for, being so analytically driven, I guess.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can't speak for ESPN's win probability model. I've seen issues with it, as you guys have mentioned. I've seen, multiple times where they've looked overconfident. Not to go too off topic, but, people were kind of, talking about their prediction for the Warriors Celtics final series, where they have the Celtics at I think an 85% chance to win the series, wow, which is just way off there. So, that's I think sometimes people get caught up in, just bucketing everything in analytics. The analytics that we try to do isn't related to like the consumer side. It's related to, making people who read PFF articles smarter football fans, or helping teams with different evaluations. So yeah, it's just, it's a different type of thing. And like, it's tough to like really break down a black box model like ESPN's. It's definitely not like trying to do anything that like actually changes the outcome of the game.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think, coming from football and then coming from analytics, it sounds like even in college and stuff, you have an emphasis in analytics and statistics as a whole. Shifting gears away from PFF, what do you foresee the future holding for you, or like what are your plans?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this summer I'm working outside of sports. I'm doing risk analytics consulting, just because I wanted to see like what it was like to work with data, not in the sports world, and like if I would still enjoy working with it. If I could pick up any new skills, since I kind of have a summer, before I start my senior year. But I definitely see myself after I graduate working somewhere in the data world. If it's in sports, I don't necessarily see myself working with a team. Like I get asked a lot, to like why I don't want to work with a team. And it's because, they're working 80 to 90 hours a week, which I think is a lot. Like even for me who likes to put in the work, that's a lot to handle. And then like the NFL just isn't as analytically driven as other leagues are right now. I have friends in the league who have said that like coaches will just ignore reports that they spent the whole week working on just because like they don't believe in this type of stuff. And like, that's not super fulfilling for me. So if I do work in sports, it would be hopefully on the content side where I can do a podcast like you guys have here. I can tweet out, different graphs that I make, and just, write and talk about football, which is, what like my favorite thing to do is.
That's what we need to know. We need to know which coaches are not taking the analytics, and then bet on the other team and see how well we do.
Yeah. Is analytics winning, right? That's the ultimate determination.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, again, that's super interesting. And you're hitting the nail on the head. Specifically for me, is like the dream is to continue to talk about football for a living and just be able to dissect it in a different lens than, just from a surface level perspective, if you will. And so, that's a lot of really good PFF insight. Do you guys have any other analytical type questions?
Yeah. I have a huge question about PFF rankings, because again, like I watch games and they pop up with the PFF rankings, and some players like Minkah Fitzgerald was ranked the 42nd best safety in football. And yeah, what did I say?
Larry Fitzgerald.
Oh, my bad. Yeah, Minkah Fitzpatrick. And I'm like, what type of numbers are they looking at here? Like, at what point do you say I don't want to look at PFF grades anymore? Like, how do I compartmentalize that while also understanding like the game, which I've been understanding since day one? How do I let that affect my judgment about Minkah Fitzpatrick? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, I think so. I prefer using objective measures to evaluate players. Like I would rather have used Minkah Fitzpatrick's like completion percentage over expected when targeted instead of their PFF grade, because I think is a little too subjective. But I think the way to kind of use numbers when evaluating players is it has to pass the smell test, and I call this the Mahomes-Darnold law, which is basically if you make a quarterback metric and Mahomes isn't on top or Darnold isn't on bottom, then you did something wrong with it, right? So it should go like that for basically every position. If the players that should be in the top 10 for you when you watch and study football aren't there for a metric or a grade or anything like that.
That is genius.
Then don't.
I like
then
that.
Just go by it, ignore it, and just like look at other ways to evaluate players that are more similar to what you think should be in line.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. I think far too often I again let things like that sway mine. Like you said, like we think about Minkah Fitzpatrick as a premier safety in the league, and then you look at his PFF grade and you're like, whoa, like he ranked pretty poorly. And I have found that a lot with more so offensive linemen, where I see like a grade versus like what I feel like I see on the field. And an offensive line is such a player is such a interesting position to, besides like, pressures allowed or sacks given up. Like if they just did their job for that play, like
there's no stat for it.
Yeah. Like how are you quantifying
Yeah.
they just did their job versus like, they pancaked the guy or they created one extra yard of carry for their running back, et cetera. And so a lot of that is the tough stuff that like you can get, kind of caught into the weeds on, but it's still fascinating that I think we're all coming to a consensus that a lot of times your eye test is what you believe in, right? Like you said, showed it's what you watch. It's what you feel like you understand and know about a sport that you feel like you know well. And so using analytics to help support some of those claims that your eye test is providing you is where analytics is at its best, right? Because then you can coincide it with your belief and like, I was right. My eye test actually prevailed versus the opposite, where again, it doesn't necessarily have to mean that you're wrong and the analytics is right. It's just that my perception versus what the numbers are actually telling me are a little bit different. So maybe I need to analyze this a little bit further, or something is not giving. And so again, it is a war, but it doesn't need to be, because you can use both of these to just be smarter as a football fan.
You need both of these.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And it's good that we like have different opinions on that stuff, because if the NFL just becomes an efficient league where everyone has the same opinion on everyone and everyone's behaving the same way, then there wouldn't be anything for us to talk about, right? So like it's good that like teams behave in suboptimal ways sometimes so that we can critique it, and that people like think differently of different players, and because it provides like good debate topics and stuff. So yeah, I do like how you guys are like really open to mixing in both of the he got that dog in them kind of way to evaluate players, and analytics too, right?
Dude, that's been such a big meme this year. I feel like more so than other years. He's got that dog in him.
Yeah.
No, that's good. That's good stuff. Do you guys have any other analytic stuff? I'm sure we could spend hours on this, but again, time is of the essence here. Tage, let's jump into a little bit of your Lions fandom. I know, again, us being Vikings fans, we talked a little bit about, again, when you became a fan and up until this point, there hasn't been a lot of, success stories or things to be like, holy crap, this was, my highlight of my Lions fandom. And so like, I want to start off with you kind of just telling us, how did you become a Lions fan? And after the 0-16 season, how did you get so emotionally invested that you were like, this is going to be my fandom? I am a diehard Lions fan after they didn't win a single game.
Yeah, it was. So what it was when my grandpa came from India when he was around 20 years old, he like wanted to get more into American things here, right? And he came to Detroit to work in the auto industry, and the Lions were like something that people did, something that people talked about. So he started watching the games around the time when my dad was starting to get into football as well, and like they were able to watch them together. And then when I was around 7 or 8 years old, like I started watching games with them, and like that was like where like my like memories reside, really, is like watching the games with my dad and my grandpa was like very memorable. Like I don't necessarily remember like outcomes of specific games when I was that young, but I do remember we'd all sit together 1 o'clock on a Sunday and just watch the Lions game together, which I thought was a lot of fun. So it kind of stuck with me. Me and my dad are talking football all the time. My mom, my brother get like really upset with us. We don't talk about other stuff. So it's just kind of like that. We're always breaking down different players of the Lions roster, and just stuff like that. And like that's why I've like stayed being such a big fan. Even though it's been difficult at times, and I've had to watch like other teams like have their moments. Like I know that like if the Lions do have a moment one year where they win a playoff game or they make a run to the Super Bowl, like it might have been worth it to be this fan all along, because like that'll be a pretty cool experience.
Absolutely. I agree with you there.
Yeah, we share that sentiment as Vikings fans, right? I mean, the reality of the situation is the goal is to play for a Super Bowl, but in order to play for a Super Bowl, you have to have experienced enough like success as, an above average team, or a team that's constantly 500, or a team that constantly gets to the playoffs, right? And so there's echelons of like where you want to reach. And the Lions aren't a team that's, consistently in the playoffs. So I can see why for Lions fans, just getting into the playoffs is a huge deal, right? Because that's not something that they expect every year or is the end result. And then, like you said, if you make a historic playoff run, for you, to have the greatest Lions moment in your life be a Super Bowl, victory is very difficult to ascertain because they haven't even taken the steps to get there yet. So the highest peak level of emotion for you that you could feel next year could be the Lions win their first playoff game or win a playoff game and, lose. But to you, that's a successful season. And so for us, we debate this all the time as Vikings fans. We never in our lifetime have not experienced the Vikings making it to a Super Bowl, right? So for us, we've seen playoffs, we've seen playoffs and then just absolute annihilation in the playoffs where we don't show up. So it's a little bit of a logical theory where it's like, I'm not at this point in my fandom. For me right now, yes, I can assess where the Vikings are as an organization, as a team, and have my realistic expectations where, if they're in a rebuilding year, I'm not like Super Bowl or bust. I'm not going to watch this team. But situationally, my goal is to witness the Vikings winning a Super Bowl at some point, right? And everything that I try to assess for the Minnesota Vikings is steps taken to get to that ultimate goal. And so one common, argument that the Vikings fans have, me and Shoshone even have, is the debate of Kirk Cousins. And Kirk Cousins is comparable to some people to Matthew Stafford, who obviously was a Lion, has now left, has tremendous amount of success with the Rams. So I'm hoping maybe you can speak a little bit to, the Matthew Stafford stuff. I know you're probably a big fan, what it was like to see him leave. And then if you were happy for his success, and then for people who are Kirk Cousins fans and Vikings fans, are there similarities that you personally see, or do the numbers show that? Or, what should we expect as Vikings fans with our quarterback?
Yeah, so I'll talk about the experience with Matthew Stafford this past year first. So I was a massive Matthew Stafford fan when he was on the Lions. I thought he was the only reason the team was relevant. Since they drafted him in 2009, in games he didn't play in, they went, and including this year, they went 5-34-1 in games he didn't play in since 2009. And then he was basically like a 45% win percentage quarterback when he played. So like literally the only reason they were like kind of relevant his whole time here. So when he went to the Rams, I got a knockoff Stafford Rams jersey to wear, when he was playing. It was a great experience watching him throughout the playoffs, especially like since he played really well in the playoffs. Like it wasn't like the Rams like had this super team that like kind of carried him through the playoffs. Like I'm glad that he played well and won the Super Bowl. And that was a great experience. And I think like a bunch of Lions fans like really rallied around him and were supporting him. And, he has the AT&T commercial where he talks about like us supporting him in the run and everything. To kind of compare him and Kirk Cousins though, what's really interesting about him and Kirk Cousins, if you want to look at like expected points added per play, or just kind of like what you think about them in general, is their mean is basically the same. Like when they're both playing at their 50th percentile average level, they'll put up basically the same numbers, or they'll play at the same level, or their teams will win about the same. The thing about Stafford is when he has his stretches in his career where he becomes really inaccurate for 4 or 5 games, sometimes he's battling injury, sometimes he's just not playing well, he'll start throwing pick sixes, or he'll start missing wide open receivers down the field. Cousins doesn't do that as much. Cousins is always very accurate. So his range of outcomes is just much more concentrated than Stafford's is. Stafford has the ceiling to play at a top 5 level for 4 or 5 games in a row and go win a Super Bowl like he just did this past year. Cousins doesn't have the floor as low as Stafford does because he has that accuracy to fall back on, but he just doesn't make as many big time throws and doesn't thread the needle as often and isn't as aggressive, where it's harder to see him winning a Super Bowl. Like a lot of things would have to go right for that to happen.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's fair. Shoshone, you want to speak to that at all?
No, that's exactly the reason. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm a big consistency guy because I see the most success with consistency rather than like, hopefulness, like let's say we got a really fast running quarterback, but he wasn't as accurate. A lot of people just want that for the entertainment value to see the what if, what could happen if we had that other dynamic that we've never had since Dante Culpepper, or, maybe Tavares Jackson, whatever. But when you really like dissect that thought process, you see that football is played by position, right? Like I'm not a big fan of quarterback being, or wins and losses being a quarterback stat, because I'm so heavy on that one offensive guard that gets ignored. I think he plays just as big of a role as the quarterback does, because the quarterback can't do shit if he's not doing his job. So that being said, I think with Stafford, you're right. You hit it dead on. The floor is much lower than Cousins because of the erraticness. But how did he win a Super Bowl, right? Like, you have to have that it factor. You have to be able to make that extra step that is outside of the range of consistency, right? Like, and what you said with everything has to go right is perfectly accurate. And the worst part about being a Vikings fan is it felt like everything was right when we had Keenum, but Keenum didn't have the accuracy that Kirk Cousins did. Who knows what would have happened if we had that situation lined up perfectly? So things haven't lined up perfectly. There's some quarterbacks who are so great that you don't need things aligned perfectly in order to take your team to the next level, right? The team will build around you, like Aaron Rodgers, right? That's why you can't compare Aaron Rodgers to Kirk Cousins. Although they're really good friends and whatever, they're not the same, right? Like, Aaron Rodgers has that it factor. He can make things happen with shitty wide receivers. Kirk Cousins can't do that, but he's also had 5 different offensive coordinator. He's had a different offensive coordinator every year since he's existed. Like, as far as trying to succeed and trying to grow, like a plant growing. He hasn't had that. He doesn't get nurtured like every other quarterback in the league does. So I think this season gives him the best opportunity to reach that Matthew Stafford ceiling, right? The coaches believe in him. His head coach believes in him. GM believes in him. And I think he believes in himself. And I think the team believes in him. So, like, what more do you want, right? Like, if you're going to be consistent, throwing 30 touchdowns and 8 picks, I think if you do that with a well-established team around you where everybody understands their roles, that is also a way to win a Super Bowl. It doesn't have to be having a star quarterback, even though I do think Kirk Cousins is a star quarterback because of that consistency so hard to attain. Not many people can attain that. But things have to fall perfectly for him. And I think things have fallen perfectly. So if you can't do it this year, then it's probably never going to happen.
Yeah, shove it. You got anything about Kirk Cousins? I know we talk about him a lot.
I mean, he's, above average quarterback in my eyes. I mean, this guy, he doesn't throw a lot of picks, like 30 and 8 picks or something like that last year. I think that if I had him as a quarterback, given that the Steelers quarterback situation with Mitch Trubisky and a rookie quarterback that we're not really sure about, small hands, I'd be very pleased to having Kirk Cousins and the possibility of that offensive flowing around him with the talent that you guys have.
Yeah. Again, I don't want to beat a dead horse. Again, I think Kirk is a very talented quarterback. I just think he has limitations to what he can do, which is why he's not a top echelon quarterback. And in my opinion, the reality of needing an entire team and situation to be perfect around you to succeed, the probability of that is so low. In a 18-game season, the probability that things are going to be perfect for you the entire season is very, very low, right? And so that's where, Shashot, you mentioned, the playing outside of that structure and that it's the NFL, right? You can't have an entire game where nobody pressures you. You're playing against also NFL caliber players. So you're going to get pressured. There's going to be good cornerbacks. You're going to have to do things outside of structure. And that's where I think Kirk's biggest demise is. And that's why I think it's really difficult for me to see a world where 21 games in a row, everything is just absolutely perfect for Kirk Cousins for him to succeed. And so do I think he's a good quarterback? Absolutely. Do I think that there's too many things that need to work around him for him to be successful? I also think that as well. And so that's where my skepticism lies on that. And that's it. We can leave it at that. But what else do you guys have for Taje about the Lions or his Lions fandom? Anything else specifically for him about that?
I think we hit a lot of main points when we talked about Swift and the receivers. And
Dan Campbell, what are your thoughts, man? This guy's been crying in press conferences. Were you crying? Were you crying with him? Did you share that sentiment? What is that like to have your head coach cry, but to also see that clearly the team is rallying around him and the team showed up every single week to play when they were always an inferior talent to most teams they faced?
Yeah, Dan Campbell's interesting. Basically what they tried to do was, all right, who's the person who's the most opposite of Matt Patricia? Let's go hire him for head coach, right? You hire someone who was on the offensive side. You hire someone who's a rah-rah guy, maybe not, someone who has very, well versed scheme experience. But so my thing about Dan Campbell is I'm glad he's there. My friend Jack, who plays for the Lions, says they really buy into him. They really just rally around him. I just think that, like what's been successful in the league lately with head coaches is very smart offensive minds. Sean McVay and Zach Taylor were both in the Super Bowl this year. Matt LaFleur has done really well in Green Bay. Kyle Shanahan has done really well in San Francisco. And then like the Vikings made a really good hire getting Kevin O'Connell, who's supposed to be a good offensive mind. So that's that's where I'm kind of worried about with Dan Campbell is, like, I think he can do a good job of building the culture and everything for the Lions, but I don't necessarily see him being the coach that wins the Lions a Super Bowl, just because the Lions like offensive play calling isn't going to add the edge that other teams that they're going to have to go through are going to get from their play callers.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment, but it was, again, this is a big eye testing, right? Because how do you statistically quantify that a team has rallied around a coach to play for him? And we all last year doing this podcast, we saw how like evident that was on a week to week basis, and it was like the Lions were the team that, you knew you should beat, but they were going to give you a tough game every single time they played. And now obviously as the Vikings lost to them one of the times, we obviously know that better than any team. And so I think that's a really big testament to Dan Campbell and the players buying in. But I agree with you, in an advanced era, analytically driven era, offensively driven era, where it seems like Dan Campbell is like the coach that you would have hired maybe 10 years ago. So I don't know. I could absolutely be wrong, and he could lead that team to hoist the Lombardi, but I don't know. You mentioned one thing, Tage. You have a friend Jack on the Lions. Are you familiar with Brady Breeze on the Detroit Lions by chance?
I'm not, but I did see that he was on your guys' show pretty recently, right?
Yeah. So ironically enough, I was working with his girlfriend and, mentioned I had a podcast. She was like, oh, he'll come on. And she was super forthcoming about it. So we were lucky enough and fortunate enough to get Brady Breeze on our podcast. And, he shared a ton of insights on Dan Campbell and football as a whole. And so he's officially a friend of the pod, and we're definitely rooting for him. So I didn't know if you knew anything about Brady Breeze or not, but that's all I got on the Lions. What else do you guys have for Tage?
Is it Jack Fox?
Yeah, Jack Fox. Mm-hmm.
Is he starting this year?
Yeah. He'll be the starter.
Oh, nice. Damn, that's awesome.
That's awesome. So you guys go back, or how do you know him?
So we just connected on Twitter, probably like this time last year. No, actually, it might have been a couple months before this, actually. So we've just kind of stayed in touch. I try not to annoy him during the season, even when I get excited. But we'll just talk about like general stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's a really good guy.
You're just tweeting him like, holy shit, that punt inside the 5, Jack, that was fucking phenomenal.
Hey, if you and Jack both want to come during the season, talk about some football, you're more than welcome to.
Absolutely, man. I feel like we're turning into a Lions show, because our first NFL player was a Lions player. Now it's a Lions fan. And so I don't know if we're just going to become a Lions podcast, but that's really, really interesting stuff. Tage, before we wrap things up, I had a quick little rapid fire segment for you. Quick questions, could be trivia, could be random. Just want to shoot them your way. And I am going to permit you to use lifelines and Shishot and Shovit if you don't know the answers to something, and we can make this a collaborative team effort. So I'm gonna shoot it your way, and then if anything you want to touch with them on, feel free to. What's your favorite sport outside of football?
Favorite sport to play or watch?
Either or, both.
To play, I grew up a golfer. I enjoy it. And to watch, it's basketball. It's NBA. Yeah.
NBA. Are you a Pistons fan, I take it?
Yeah, I'm a Pistons fan.
Okay.
Do you have a Detroit Bad Boys hat?
No, I should get one though. Hopefully this new era of Pistons basketball has a cool nickname with it too. So with Kate and everything.
Yeah. Favorite football stadium you've watched a game at outside of Lions Stadium, if any?
So I did have the opportunity to go to Heinz Field for a preseason game.
Nice.
And I thought it was so cool with like the three rivers that you could kind of like see over the stadium. I thought it was like a beautiful scenery. Really enjoyed that experience.
Yeah,
Nice.
Show it. You're salivating all over that.
Oh, I am 100%.
Tage, Calvin Johnson or Randy Moss?
Yeah, like I do think Randy Moss was probably a slightly better receiver. I loved Calvin Johnson though. He just didn't play long enough and didn't have like the season with the Patriots like Randy Moss did.
Fair enough.
You guys ended up having two of the most what if players of all time.
Yeah.
Calvin Johnson and Barry Sanders.
Yeah, like I wonder if like, Calvin and Sanders were watching Stafford go and win the Super Bowl in his first year without Lions this year and being like, oh shoot, we should have done that probably, right?
Calvin's
They're like-
contemplating coming out of retirement and being like, let me just sign with the fucking Buccaneers.
Yeah, they're like, that was an option? Like, nobody told me.
Dude, they bleed Detroit Lions, baby. They were like, it's Detroit or bust for us. Tage, you guys can help them out. 12 teams have yet to win a Super Bowl. Can you name all 12?
Oh, this
Oh, wow.
We can start with the easy ones, right? Lions, Vikings,
Boom.
Texans,
Yep.
Jaguars.
Yep.
Let's see here. Browns,
Yep.
Bengals,
Yes.
Titans.
Correct.
Anyone?
Yep.
Yeah. Now I might need some help.
What do you guys got?
Yeah.
You guys got any?
Cardinals.
Boom.
Jaguars? We said that?
He said Jaguars.
Yeah.
Cool.
We're at 8. 4 more.
Do the Dolphins have a championship?
They do.
Yeah.
They do.
One's a team the Vikings just consistently lost in the Super Bowl against.
Buffalo?
Yes, Buffalo's number 9. One is we debated this team because of this running back and his, I guess
Panthers.
controversy. Yeah, there you go, Panthers.
Yeah, Panthers.
Number 10. There's 2 more, and I don't know which ones you guys didn't say, but I'll say
Which
I think
conference? Give us the conferences.
Chargers.
Chargers.
Chargers
Yeah.
is 11. Boom, one more. One more. You guys got this. You guys got this. They've been in a Super Bowl pretty recently, and they're going to be forever remembered for being in that Super Bowl.
Oh, Falcons.
no.
Bam. That is number 12, the Atlanta
Nice.
Falcons. 12 teams have yet to win a Super Bowl, man. God, somebody's got to win, right? Some new team at some point. We have to start shrinking this list because this is almost half the NFL. It's kind of sad. Okay. Of the 12, Tage, who has the most realistic chance to win the Super Bowl this year?
This year, let's see here. I could see the Bengals like running it back just because those wide receivers are so good. Like they could win the AFC again, end up in the Super Bowl, and then like one lucky bounce and they win it, right?
Yeah, could happen. They were close.
I would pick the Browns if we knew how much Deshaun was going to play, but like it seems like he will be suspended for some part of the season, maybe the whole season. So not them.
You guys
Bills is
wanna
a
chime in?
pretty
Yeah.
solid answer.
I would say the Bills or even the Chargers, right? We're all
Yeah.
hyping up the Chargers offense and with their defensive signings and draft picks. I mean, that's a team
I
that
don't know about their defense yet. That defense, I still got to watch
Right.
a couple games.
they still have to prove their worth. But again, we talk about offense and it's an offensively driven league right now. Again, the Chargers could take reign as the best offense in the league. So let's end it off with, again, relevant running back information, right? This episode, like way back when, 100 AD, when we started, we were talking about running backs. So let's end this off with the biggest running back bust in fantasy football this year, in your opinion, Tage.
The biggest running back bust this year, I think, will be who we talked about earlier with DeAndre Swift. Like I guess I'm just not super high on the Lions in general this year. Like I don't think they'll score that often. And I think like what you mentioned with like there's just too many mouths to feed, and there's not a good cook that can feed all those mouths successfully. So I think he could just like kind of like get lost in the fold of everything like happening with the Lions this year.
That's fair. And then on the contrary, biggest running back sleeper this year for you?
Biggest running back sleeper is James Cook on the Bills. Something that I really value coming out of college is your explosive run rate, like how many rushes you have that get over 10 yards over what is expected of you. And so he had the highest explosive run rate out of any running back in the draft. He's going to be on a really good offense. And I think he's like exactly what the Bills need when they have a light box and like it's an advantageous like RPO, just hand it off to James Cook. He could bust like 20 yards.
And he's great at catching the ball too, right? And so it'll be a nice little safety net for Josh Allen if he wants to play the dink and dunk game. That's all I got. Thank you so much for sticking through it with us. All of your insight on the analytics, incredibly useful, insightful. We're more than happy to have you back on at any point if you ever just want to shoot the shit and talk football, because that is absolutely all we do. You guys have any final words for Tage?
Dude, this has been fun, man.
Thank you. Yeah,
thanks
thank you
a
so
lot.
much for your time.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for having me on, guys. Like, I really enjoyed coming on here. you guys are doing like really good stuff. Definitely going to listen to some of the previous episodes, because like you guys were great to talk to. It was a really enjoyable experience. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, Tage. Again, thank you so much, man. You are more than welcome to hop on at any point in the future. This is going to wrap up the episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We're the Only Playbook. Peace out, guys.